Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. It is my 1,000th show. Yes, my 1,000th show since I expanded the platform beyond YouTube into Google Podcasts and Spotify. So at the end of the show, I'm going to do some memory lane stuff and whatnot. So that should be a lot of fun. But before that, we'll do our typical show. Major League Baseball, Wnba, Major League Soccer, recapping everything from yesterday, looking ahead to today. We'll go over the news and notes, then we'll talk about some memories and stuff over the last 2.5 years on the podcast and my best bet of the day. All right, we're going to start with Major League Baseball as we will go over the results from yesterday and look ahead to today. Indians over the Twins 3-1 in 7 innings. The Indians are 70-72. Minnesota 63-82. Pirates over the Reds 6-5. Pittsburgh 53-91. Cincinnati 75-70. Tigers over the Brewers 1-0 in 11 on a walk-off leadoff RBI double by Derek Hill. Detroit 69-76, Milwaukee 89-56. Cubs over the Phillies 63 to Cubs 66-79, Phillies 72-72. Nats over the Marlins 8-2, the Nats 16-85, Miami 61-84. Yankees over the Orioles 7-2, the Yankees 81-64, Baltimore 46-98. Rays over the Blue Jays 2-0. The Rays 90-55. Toronto 81-64. Cardinals over the Mets 7-6-11. The Cardinals 75-69. The Mets 72-74. Rockies over the Braves 5-4. The Rockies 67-78. Atlanta 76-67. Twins over the Indians 63-7. Twins 64-82. Cleveland 70-73. Rangers over the Astros, 8-1. The Rangers, 54-90. Houston, 84-60. White Sox over the Angels, 9-3. The White Sox, 83-61. LA, 70-74. Royals over the Athletics, 10-7. The Royals, 66-78. Oakland, 77-67. Giants over the Padres, 6-1. The Giants, 95-50. San Diego, 74-70. Dodgers over the D-backs, 8-4. The Dodgers, 93-53. The D-backs, 47-98. As the Dodgers clinch a playoff spot, being the second team to do so other than the Giants. And the Red Sox over the Mariners, 8-4. The Red Sox, 82-65. Seattle, 78-67. All right, looking ahead to today's games at 1 o'clock, you have the Marlins and the Nationals, Trevor Rogers and Josh Rogers. So we're at the Rogers Bowl here in Washington. The Marlins are minus 122. The Nats are plus 104. Over under 9. Overs even money. Unders minus 122. Marlins minus 1.5 is plus 134. Nats plus 1.5 is minus 162. I still think the money line here is pretty low for Trevor Rogers. So I would actually like minus 122 at Miami here. Next up, the Brewers and the Tigers. Brandon Woodruff and Matt Manning. Brewers minus 240, Tigers plus 198, over under 8.5. Overs minus 112, unders minus 112. Brewers minus 1.5 is minus 152, Tigers plus 1.5 is plus 126. I'm going to go over 8.5 minus 110. 3 o'clock, Rays Blue Jays. Michael Wacha and Robbie Ray. Blue Jays minus 176, Rays plus 148, over under 9, overs even money, unders minus 122. Rays plus 1.5 is minus 138. Blue Jays minus 1.5 is plus 115. I am going to go with over 9 and even money. I think Toronto's offense rocks today after getting shut out yesterday. 4 o'clock, Red Sox Mariners. Tanner Houck and Marco Gonzalez. Red Sox minus 124, Mariners plus 106, over under 8.5. Overs minus 104, unders minus 118. Red Sox minus 1.5 is plus 134. Mariners plus 1.5 is minus 162. I'm going with the Mariners as a home dog. They need the games. Well, Boston does too, but Marco Gonzalez, you could argue, is better than Tanner Houck. 6:30, Reds Pirates. Vladimir Gutierrez and Mitch Keller. Reds, minus 142. Pirates, plus 120. Over under 9. Overs, minus 102. Unders, minus 120. Reds, minus 1/2 is plus 110. Pirates, plus 1/2 is minus 132. I'm taking the play I picked for best bet yesterday, and I'm doing it again, but obviously not for best bet. I'm going to lay to minus 1/2 at plus 110 for the Cincinnati Reds. At 7, you got the Cubs and the Phillies. Alec Mills, Ranger Suarez. Phillies minus 198, Cubs plus 166, over under 9, overs minus 112, unders minus 108. Cubs plus 1/2 is minus 120. Phillies minus 1/2 is even money. I'm going to go under 9, minus 108, but I don't feel good about it. Yanks-O's. Nestor Cortez Jr. and John Means. Yanks minus 188, Orioles plus 156, over under 9.5. Overs minus 14, unders minus 106. Yanks minus 1/2 is minus 115. Orioles plus 1/2 is minus 104. I'm going to go under 9.5, minus 104. I think this is a well-pitched game. Cards-Mets. John Lester, Tyler McGill. Mets minus 174, Cardinals plus 146, over under 8.5. Overs minus 108, unders minus 112. Cards plus 1/2 is minus 142. Mets minus 1/2 is plus 118. I'm going over 8.5, minus 108. Rockies Braves at 7:20. Antonio Senzatella and Huascar Ynoa. Braves minus 100. Rocks plus 168, over under 8.5. Overs minus 115, unders minus 105. Rocks plus 1/2 is minus 120. Braves minus 1/2 is even money. I'm going over 8.5, minus 115. 7:30, Indians Twins. Cal Quantrill and Griff Jacks. Twins minus 112, Indians minus 104, over under 9. Overs minus 110, so it's under. Indians minus 1/2 is plus 146. Twins plus 1/2 is minus 176. So Twins favored on the money line, Indians favored on the run line. I'm going to go with the Indians as a slight road dog at minus 104. 8 o'clock, the Astros and the Rangers. Jose Urquidy and Kelly Arrieta. The Astros minus 205, Rangers plus 172, over under 8.5. Overs minus 122, unders even money. Astros minus 1/2 is minus 132, Texas plus 1/2 is plus 110. I'm going over 8.5 at the juice number. 8, Jules White Sox. Jansen Junk and Dallas Keuchel. Line's not out yet, but if the total is anything less than 9.5, bring on the over. But according to ESPN, the White Sox are minus 240 in that contest. A's Royals. Sean Manaea, Mike Minor. Oakland minus 142, Royals plus 120, over under 8.5. Overs minus 112, unders minus 108. Angels minus 1/2 is plus 115. Royals plus 1/2 is minus 138. I'm going over 8.5, minus 112. 9:45, Padres Giants. Joe Musgrove, Dominic Leone. No. Oh, wait, we do have a line. Padres minus 120 to Giants plus 102, over under 8.5. Overs minus 102, unders minus 118. Padres minus 1/2 is plus 146. Giants plus 1/2 is minus 176. Tough one. I think I'm going to go under 8.5 at the juice number. And at 10 o'clock on ESPN, you have the D-backs and the Dodgers, Merrill Kelly and Julio Urias. I don't see a lineup for this game. But if the total is anything less than maybe 8.5, I'll consider the over. All right, now we'll move on to the WNBA, where we will go over yesterday's game and look ahead to tonight's game. as the regular season is about to come to a close this weekend. The Dream beat the Fever 85-78. The Dream 80-22. Indiana 6-24. Tiffany Hayes 31 points for the Dream, and Kelsey Mitchell had 18 for Indiana. Tonight's game at 7 o'clock on CBS Sports Network is the Liberty and the Sun. The Liberty are a game back of the Mystics for the last playoff spot in the league. Everybody's clinched so far. Connecticut, Vegas, Minnesota, Seattle, Phoenix, Chicago, Dallas. And the last spot's in between Washington, Sparks, and the Liberty. Liberty are a game back. They need the games. You know, Connecticut has won 12 straight, is on a fire, and want to clinch that 1 seed. Meanwhile, the Liberty have lost 7 straight. They've really self-combusted here. I'm taking Connecticut here. I have no choice. All right, now we'll do Major League Soccer as we will go over the results from yesterday and look ahead to tonight's big slate. Columbus over the New York Red Bulls 2-1. NYCFC in Dallas 3-3 draw. Miami over Toronto 1-0. And like I said a second ago, a lot of games tonight. We're going to do some gambling in this segment, or gambling picks, I should say. So, at 7 o'clock, you have Atlanta and Cincinnati. Atlanta's minus 185, Cincy's plus 410, draws 3-1. I'm taking Atlanta. 7:30, DC United against Chicago. DC's minus 195, Chicago's plus 440 or plus 430, draw plus 320, taking the United. Orlando and Club Football Montreal. Orlando minus 135, Montreal plus 310, draw plus 270. Montreal is tied for the last playoff spot in the East. Meanwhile, Orlando is in a good spot. I think they'll win at home. $8:30, Kansas City and Minnesota. KC minus 130, Minnesota plus 290, draw plus 270. These teams aren't that far up. Minnesota's the 6th seed. KC is the 2 seed. From a standing standpoint, they're 12 games apart. You would think that they're further apart, but I'm going to say KC wins that one. 9 o'clock, Austin and LAFC. Austin is plus 155, LA plus 140, draw plus 250. LAFC's out of the playoff picture for the time being. And so is Austin FC. But LAFC is technically tied for the last playoff spot in the West. So I'm going to take LAFC on the road plus 140 to get a big win. 10 o'clock, Portland hosting Colorado. Portland minus 105, Colorado plus 230, draw plus 250. I'm going to go with the draw at plus 250 just to be different here. 10:30, LA Galaxy hosting Houston. Galaxy minus 155, Houston plus 340, draw plus 290. I'm going with the Galaxy. And at 10:30 as well, you have San Jose hosting Salt Lake. San Jose's even money. Salt Lake plus 230. Draw plus 240. Salt Lake is tied for the final playoff spot in the West. Meanwhile, San Jose's in the bottom. So I'm going to go with Real Salt Lake on the road at plus 230 to knock off San Jose. Alrighty, now I'm going to do the latest news and notes. Really, really sad news from yesterday. And that is that Norm Macdonald had passed away yesterday at the age of 61. Known for comedy, Saturday Night Live. It's just really sad. Very, very tragic. He was only 61 years old. He was very popular. Everybody loved him. His comedy stuff, he did Ridiculous. A thing called Me Doing Stand-Up, which was him. And Hitler's Dog, Gossip, and Trickery. Me Doing Stand-Up and the Hitlers were stand-up specials, and Ridiculous was a sketch album. He wrote a book based on a true story, not a memoir, in 2016. Not a memoir was a pretty good book. From what I've heard, I would love to read it. He hosted a talk show, sports show with Norm Macdonald. 9 episodes with Mike Gibbons, Lori Jo Hoekstra, and Daniel Killison. Norm Macdonald live for a couple years, 3 seasons, 36 episodes. And then in 2018, Norm Macdonald has a show. Very clever name, only 10 episodes. And then he had last year a show during quarantine as he entitled it Quarantine. And he was in a lot of movies and TV shows through the years. Billy Madison, Dr. Dolittle, The Flight Before Christmas, Claws. And in TV, he was on a lot of different things. He was on the Drew Carey Show a couple times. He had some roles on Family Guy. He had a role in My Name is Earl. He was on Mike Tyson Mysteries. And he was very involved with the show Roseanne. So, a fabulous career. And he's somebody that really had a very positive and good influence on a lot of people. And he, like I said, he was very well loved. And thoughts and prayers out to his family and all of his friends. The other big thing that happened yesterday, Governor Newsom stays in office as the recall fails. No surprise. I called it on the show yesterday. California's a blue state, so you would have thought that Newsom would retain his position. Von Miller showed some love to Teddy Bridgewater. He said he hasn't felt that since 18 was here, man. Obviously, referring to Peyton Manning. I just set off his quote. And here's a quote from John Gruden. He said, he felt like I died and woke up and had multiple lives. That's what John Gruden said about his team's overtime win. He also said he felt like a cat. Players of the week were just announced in the NFL. AFC, Patrick Mahomes, Max Crosby, and Evan McPherson in terms of offense, defense, and special teams. And the same thing for the NFC, Matthew Stafford, Chandler Jones, and Bradley Pinion. I really think that Kyler Murray was screwed. Matthew Stafford, all due respect, but it should have been Kyler Murray. He was just fabulous on Sunday afternoon. Two things that were trending yesterday. The Royals' Jake Brent threw a pitch that didn't even make it off the pitcher's mound, which is literally the worst pitch you'll ever see. And a Ravens fan celebrated early as he jumped into a Vegas pool after he thought Baltimore sealed the Monday Night Football win. Former Knicks point guard Frank Ntilikina may be headed to the Dallas Mavericks as they have emerged as a likely destination, so him and Kristaps Porzingis would be reunited. NBA is not mandating the vaccine as the players being required to get the shot was a non-starter for the MBPA in negotiations with the league. Tigers pitcher Jose Cisnero needed 8 stitches after taking a fall in his home and has been placed on the injured list as he slipped on the stairs. Jeez. Josh Gordon is done with treatment as the NFLPA recommended that he'd be reinstated by the league as Gordon awaits final approval from Roger Goodell. Mariners prospect Edwin Arroyo crushed a homer and sent his bat into orbit, and the team went wild. It was a really, really fun bat flip to watch. Aaron Gordon gets a 4-year, $92 million contract extension to stay with the Denver Nuggets. I just think they're banking on potential. So I've been saying for the last couple of years on this podcast, players are getting paid based on future projections, not past production. And that's an example of this Gordon extension with Denver. The Houston Rockets are working to trade John Wall as he wants out of Houston, and they're trying to find Wall a new home. Couple NFL injuries. 4 Raiders suffer injuries on Monday night. Offensive lineman Denzel Good towards ACL. Marcus Mariota, Yannick Ngakoue, and Gerald McCoy believed also to have suffered long-term injuries. Those 3 players, well, the 2 defensive players more so than Mariota, very important players to their team. So hopefully those guys will be okay. Raheem Mostert's actually out for the season as he's getting knee surgery, as he announces on Twitter. Marshawn Lattimore week to week with a chipped bone in his thumb, so he won't play week 2. We'll see when he comes back. Eric Bieniemy could emerge as a coaching candidate for USC, as it's one of the only college jobs that might interest him, according to Adam Schefter. Ryan Braun retires as he made his announcement on Twitter after 14 seasons. So congratulations to Ryan Braun, great player. One of the forgotten great players, in my opinion, because he just kind of declined a lot due to injury and whatnot. And I just think Braun is a player that got forgotten about, and also he got suspended for PEDs, which had a lot of people turn on him. But yeah, Ryan Braun, awesome career. The Mariners are to host the 2023 All-Star Game as the league chooses T-Mobile Park as the 2023 site. So congratulations to the Mariners for getting that All-Star game. All right, I promised this earlier in the show. Before Best Bet, I'm going to talk about how right now I'm recording my 1,000th podcast show. It's been a fun ride. It's such a joy to share my opinions with all things sports and pop culture with you guys, and it's just something that I look forward to doing every Monday to Friday, and sometimes even on the weekends when I have to record an emergency episode for whatever reason. I made a list of things that I want to touch on during this segment that I wanted to do for my 1,000th show. My first thing, best predictions I've made on this show. Last year, or I should say this year, but last basketball season, I predicted that the Texas Longhorns would lose early in the 2021 NCAA tournament. And I thought there was a chance they'd lose to Abilene Christian, and they did. So that was one of the better predictions made by me on the podcast. And I think I even said I'd take a stab at the money line, whatever that was. I also predicted the Montreal Canadiens to win Game 7 in Toronto last year during the Stanley Cup playoffs. I just had the gut feeling in my mind that day. That was just an awesome prediction made by me. In terms of a full season prediction, last NBA season I predicted the arrival of the Phoenix Suns, but the caveat is little did I know that they were going to be in the NBA Finals. I thought that Chris Paul was going to have a big influence on that team, and I thought that guys like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton would make leaps, which I was right about. Last year I covered American Idol. Well, this year too, but last year more so because a lot of the show was recorded during the pandemic, and I really made that a focal point of the show as sports weren't on. But I hit it on the head with predicting the winner, and that was Just Sam, who was just awesome. Very talented. She hasn't been heard from, but I want her to be heard from. Like, she's so talented, and she deserved the win last year. Lego Masters was a show I covered last year during the pandemic as well. And I also correctly predicted the winner of season 1, which was Brian and Amy, who were a couple that entered the show and they won. And I really thought they were going to win because they just made awesome buildings every week. And Masked Singer, predicting Lil Wayne as the robot right out of the get-go, was among one of my best predictions. And I say that because the judges got it wrong. The panelists, Robin, Ken, Jenny, and Nicole, were wrong. I know he got eliminated the first episode, but as I remember watching that show, thinking, that's Lil Wayne. I know that's Lil Wayne. So I'm counting that among best predictions. Worst predictions. Picking the Cowboys to win the NFC East in 2019 and 2020. I picked the Washington professional football team that finished last place in the NFC East last year. I idiotically thought Lady Gaga was the sun last year on The Masked Singer because of how talented she was, but it turned out to be Leanne Rimes, who's also really talented. I chose the Titans to go 6-10 and the Packers to go 8-8 in the 2020 NFL season. Those were really bad predictions. And a bad prediction this past NBA season, me thinking that John Morant was better than Trae Young, Very bad prediction. Trae Young took his team to the conference finals. John Morant hasn't made the playoffs yet. And these guys have been drafted only a year apart. Players and coaches I've been right about in a good way since I started the podcast on expansional forms of Google and Spotify. Kyler Murray, Nick Bosa, Zion Williamson, Ja Morant, R.J. Barrett, Chase Young, Monty Williams, Frank Vogel. So these are players and coaches I've been right about. And by the way, the caveat here is players that have been drafted since 2019 and coaches that have been hired since March of 2019, because that's when I started doing the podcast beyond YouTube. Players and coaches I've been right about in terms of bad. Daniel Jones of the Giants killed the pick on the podcast when it happened, and I'm right. And I think I'm going to be right. And Luke Walton, I thought, was not the best hire for the Sacramento Kings, because I thought he was a product of Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and that Warriors team that played so well when he was their intern head coach as Steve Kerr had his surgery. I believe he had surgery on his back or something, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Luke Walton with the Kings I didn't think would be good. Players and coaches that I've been wrong about in terms of who I thought was going to stink, who turned out to be good. Or not necessarily stink, but in a better way to say this, better than expected. Tyler Herro of the Miami Heat, Darnell Savage of the Green Bay Packers, and now coaches, there's a lot of them. Joe Judge of the New York Giants, Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers, Ty Lue of the Los Angeles Clippers. I should say Ty Lue since he's been on the Clippers. Dean Avison of the Wild, and Dominique Ducharme of the Canadiens. Players and coaches I've been wrong about in terms of players that I thought were and coaches I thought were gonna be great, and turned out to be a fail. Dwayne Haskins was probably the one that got me egg on my face the most. I really thought that guy was gonna be a star. DeAndre Baker, formerly of the Giants, and N'Keal Harry is not the player I thought he was going to be. And in terms of a coach, I really thought Stan Van Gundy would have been better than what he was with New Orleans. I did not think he'd be one and done there. My favorite draft that I covered on the show, I got to say the 2020 NFL draft, because that really got everyone together from a rallying cry standpoint, because that was the very beginning of the pandemic. Had everybody with their takes again. There was a lot of drama in this draft. Whether the Dolphins were actually going to pass on a quarterback or not, they really threw out some fake news there, as they either were trying to trade up for a lineman or passing on a Tua Tagovailoa for Justin Herbert, which in retrospect doesn't look like a good decision right now. But there was a lot of subplots to that, and I think that really kind of owned up to the hype a little bit. Favorite emergency podcast? I gotta say, when the Clippers pulled off the Kawhi and Paul George thing, they signed Kawhi and then they traded for Paul George. I remember I had a 15-minute emergency episode talking about the ramifications of the trade and how shocking it was. The podcast with the most views. I combined the Spotify, Anchor, and Google plays with the YouTube plays. And obviously this is since the 2019 NCAA Tournament Predictions Show. That was the first show I did on the other platforms. And the show that got the most views combined all platforms, YouTube, Google, and Spotify, and Anchor. The 2021 Kentucky Derby preview and prediction show with my friend Jeff Burns. So congrats to Jeff Burns on having the show with the most views. I'm sure he'll be on again for the Breeders' Cup coming up next month. He's a great guest, so it's cool to see that a show that I did with him got the most views. Very nice guy too, by the way. The guest with the most appearances, Derek Felix. He'll be coming on tonight too to talk about this nice round number accomplishment for me and some football, baseball, and U.S. Open talk as well. So looking forward to have Derek on tonight, as he's been the guest with the most appearances, as tonight he'll have another appearance. He'll be episode 1001. Biggest star guest, John Buchacross. He's been on multiple times. Obviously, he's a Sports Center anchor on ESPN. Hockey guy. He calls the Frozen Four every year. And he's just a great all-around guy, too. Favorite episodes to record. College and NFL over-unders show in 2019 with You Better You Bet's Nick Kostos. Nick's a fun guy. I haven't had him on since then, but that was just a really fun show to do, and having Nick on was an absolute pleasure. College basketball conference tournament and futures with Jared Smith. Jared Smith is a great guy, a great follow on Twitter. He's a good bettor as well. It was really, really a joy to have Jared on the show, and I'd love to have him on again. He was fabulous. So shout out to Jared Smith, who is the co-host of the show The Morning After. NCAA tournament predictions with my two friends, Joe Russo and Selena Scotti. They were on in March. It was the first time I had two guests on at the same time in terms of a full show. There was one time I had Derek join in on a podcast with George Brew and I. George Brew, obviously the host of his own show, What's Brewin'? And I've been a recurring guest on What's Brewin' as well. I haven't had George on in a long time. He's a good get, and he's good at gambling as well. So maybe I'll get George on soon. But yeah, doing that predictions show, and my friend Joe, by the way, predicted Abilene Christian over Texas, and he also had another big upset as well. He had an 8/1. I need to look up what it was, but he hit it right on the head. It was Loyola Chicago over Illinois. That was the one he had, and it was exciting when that upset was unfolding. But I think he had Loyola in the Final Four, but they lost to Oregon State, the 12th seed, in the Sweet 16. So Joe did a good job with a couple of these upset calls. So shouts to that. Another fun one that I recorded was having my friend Steve Budana on the show back in January. We did the over-unders for hockey, the point total over-unders. That was a ton of fun. We did futures as well. He came on again in May to talk about the playoffs as well. Hopefully we'll have Steve on again. That was a lot of fun. Best activities I've done on the podcast in terms of shows and segments. Shows, I gotta say, doing Madison's Bracket of Pain and Madison's Bracket of Glory, which was inspired by former WFAN host Joe Beningo, who had a bracket of pain, which him and his former co-host Evan Roberts did together during the quarantine, and that was a lot of fun, and that inspired me to make my own brackets and have guests on to analyze the brackets and go over some fun and painful memories with me. And the other favorite activity I did on the show in terms of segments, I remember I did predict every team's coach and manager 3 years from now. And I may have gotten one right. If Wes Unseld Jr. is still the head coach of the Washington Wizards 3 years from now, I'm going to be right about that one. But that was a lot of fun to do. But my one regret is not doing it for college football and college basketball, which now looking back, I really wish I did, because obviously Clay Helton's not with USC anymore, and I think I would have predicted a new coach for USC anyway. But now I really regret not doing it for college football and college basketball. That's something I said I wanted to do on the podcast, but I never really had the time for it. I love doing the prospect checkup shows for Major League Baseball. I usually do 3 times a year. I love doing the conference tournament predictions for college basketball. I love doing redrafts. Those are fun segments to do. Redrafting old drafts and trade value lists. I haven't done the trade value in so long. I might do trade value soon for NHL and the NBA as those seasons are about to start. So maybe I'll do that. I love doing trade value. Doing the top 100 players ranked based on trade value alone. That's a lot of fun. So maybe I'll do that at some point. People that I'd like to have on for guests that I have not had on yet. Andy Molitor is somebody who is a sharp handicapper. He is a lot of fun. He follows me on Twitter. He is the co-host of the Deep Dive Pod, along with Drew Dinsick, a.k.a. Whale Capper. I'd like to have those guys on. They're very smart. As Andy Molitor is also a co-host of Brown Bag Bets, along with Alex Christensen. Maybe I'll try to get Alex on as well, as he's a smart guy too. Ariel Epstein, she's Jared Smith's co-host on The Morning After. She's outstanding. I love Ariel. Ariel follows me on Twitter, and maybe I'll have her on someday. Maybe she'll be the next guest other than Derek. That's a goal. I'd love to have Ariel on. Craig Sager Jr., he follows me on Twitter as well. He's obviously the son of former NBA TNT sideline reporter Craig Sager, who passed away almost 5 years ago. Craig Sager, obviously the best to ever do it on the sidelines. He's missed every day. Craig wrote a book, and I have his book. Living Out Loud, Sports Cancer, and the Things Worth Fighting For. Craig wrote it with his son and Brian Curtis. And it was foreword by Charles Barkley. So I'd love to have Craig Sager Jr. on the show. He's a fun guy to talk to on Twitter. And he has some interesting takes as well. He's somebody that would just be amazing to have on. Jack Curry of the Yes Network. I've met Jack Curry before several times at several functions that he would be a good get. I never had a play-by-play announcer on other than John Buchacross. But John's main job is SportsCenter anchor. I would love to have on ESPN and Yes Network's Ryan Ruocco. He's the rising star if he isn't a star already in that industry. So he would be a joy to have on. I've met Ryan before as well. It'd be also fun to have Michael Kay on, the voice of the Yankees, on Yes right now. I've met Michael before. Linda Cohn of ESPN. I've met Linda several times. She's a very, very nice lady. She would be a pleasure to have on the podcast. I've told John to tell her hi before on the podcast too, because I know that John and Linda are friends, and they both love the same sport, hockey. So having Linda on to talk hockey would be just a pleasure. And I mentioned Jack Curry earlier. He has a book, so maybe I'll have him on to talk about his book as well as the Yankees. Other people I just want to give shout-outs to in terms of guests that I never had on before. Incarcerated Bob. He's a fun Twitter follow. He's a very smart guy. Zach Braziller, who Derek Felix is a big fan of. Somebody else that I'd like to have on the show. I don't know her last name, but she's at Kelly in Vegas, who's a really, really sharp handicapper. She's a smart girl as well. Marco D'Angelo is a good in terms of betting as well. He's the co-founder of WagerTalk.com. So he'd be a fun get as well. And a couple shout-outs to guests that I had on in the past that I haven't mentioned yet on the show. Ryan Berger, really smart NBA guru. He knows all sports, but his main thing is NBA. He's a good guest. Somebody else that I want to give a quick shout-out to is Dan Wheeler. I mentioned a couple people that are on the What's Brewing program with me, Derek and George Brew. But Dan Wheeler's a fun person to have on. My buddy James Celestin, who's been on several times. He's fabulous. I love his hot takes. Julian Gilardi of Grunt Talks, as well as Bobby Thompson of Grunt Talks. Bobby has the blue check mark by his name now, which is well-deserved. Now we want Julian to get that blue check mark by his name as well. Nick Caruso, who's James Celestin's co-host on their podcast, Sports Dudes. And I've been on Sports Dudes as well. It's a fun show. Jeff Maglicetti. How can we forget about Jeff Maglicetti? He deserves a shout-out. Very good coverage with the WNBA. He's good at everything as well. He's good with NASCAR, too. He's fabulous. There's a lot of people I've had on the show in the past that deserve some shout-outs. I mentioned Jeff Burns already. He's fabulous. He's very, very smart, especially with horse racing. He's just amazing. Terry Cushman, who has his own podcast called The Bastards of Boston Baseball. He's really good as well as a guest. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. I haven't had my friend Sean Verma on in a long time. He's a smart kid. I've had him on the Talk Yankees. He's a big Toronto guy. He likes the Maple Leafs and the Raptors. He's not a Blue Jays fan. He's a Yankees fan. He's also a Green Bay Packers fan as well. So there's a lot of people I've had on in the past. Jake Braun of Amazing But True. He has a lot of different podcasts. Gang's All Here. He's a really, really fun person Just wanted to give him a shout. Alex Keeler. He was a good guest that I had on. Russell Baxter, somebody I haven't had on in a long time. He covers the NFL. He used to be on Bleacher Report, but he's on a bunch of different things right now. Jonathan Wagner I've had on. He was a good get. Josh Eberle was great. Anthony Donahue was a good guest. I'd love to have Anthony on again. He's so much fun to interact with on Twitter. But yeah, there's a lot more guests that I've had on too. Just wanted to give a couple of the guests that I've had on in the past a shout out. So, happy 1000th episode to me. All right, best bet of the day. Brought to you by FanDuel. Tough one. But because it's my 1000th show, I'm actually going to go somewhere different today other than baseball over-unders. I'm going to go to Major League Soccer, believe it or not. And I am going to go with a team that I really don't think should be an underdog tonight, and that is Real Salt Lake. There's somehow a dog on the road. San Jose's no good, and I really like Real Salt Lake, so I'm going to Real Salt Lake, laying a unit on them to win outright tonight against San Jose on the road. All right, so there you have it for the show today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping everything from MLB, WNBA, and Major League Soccer looking ahead to tomorrow. Golf is back tomorrow. We'll preview and predict the Thursday night football game between the Giants and the Washington football team. College football's on tomorrow. So it's the Safeway Open that's on tomorrow. So we will go over the tee times and make a pick on tomorrow's podcast. So I hope you guys have a great, great day, everybody.